Hello and welcome to part 1 of my memories of living on Fron Road, Connah between the 1950s to the 1970s. I will use family archive material such as old photos and rare silent film. I will also use old newspaper cuttings and ordnance survey maps from the internet. At the start, I show an old uncluttered OS map of Fron Road with a little blue figure placed where our house was. This is followed by an 8mm silent film that pans the street. This was taken in the late 1950s. It shows a lady getting out of the car. This was our Auntie Winnie Evans, and the crowd around her is our family. That's one of my brothers on the back of the car. The last 8mm film is from the 1960s. If you notice a concrete lamppost, this was peppered with machine gun bullets when the German bomber came over Connah. See my vlog on Sealand RAF base. Now a larger OS map. The following photos will show the original route of the Fron Road Brook in blue, the Iron Gate in black and Richmond Road marked in grey, and finally roughly where Thornfield Avenue is today marked in yellow. So the route appeared from Thornfield Avenue, or Big Hill as we called it, flowed close to the bottom of the Gardens and D Road. It went under a small concrete bridge which is still there, turned a bend at Richmond Road, and then it went past the swings towards the now surgery car park. Then it came close to the Iron Gate that you would have seen. After this it disappeared. The brook was finally piped around the 1960s. I know because we played in the very large pipes they were laying out. These are my memories of living in the terraced house in Fron Road. I will give you a verbal walkthrough, but I've also drawn very rough floor plans of the downstairs and upstairs. I only have a few photos covering the downstairs, none at all for upstairs. This shows two front doors. The first opened out to the street. This was usually left open on sunny or bright days, mainly because the inside hallway was very dark when it was shut. The second door was called the vestibule. This had two frosted glass panels which allowed light into the hallway. On the walls there were wooden dado rails running the full length. Below this was embossed wallpaper which had been painted with dark wood varnish, which made the hall darker. Lost the plot on why, unless it was to mimic wood panelling. This shows down the street, showing the old Presbyterian church and boathouse. It was probably taken around the early 1970s. The third photo was taken from the living room and shows the kitchen and bathroom door in the distance. Downstairs plan front room. The front room, or parlour, as my mother called it, was the posh room, where she would meet relations or neighbours who came for a chinwag. The front room was the only room downstairs that had floorboards. The others had either concrete or marley tiles. My mother had a glass cabinet which displayed bone china cups and plates and lots of little knick-knacks. As you walked, the floorboards would rattle the ornaments in the cabinet. There was a plush Axminster carpet underfoot and a similar plush rug by the fire grate. There was a plug-in electric fire set into the fire grate, which had a coal effect, which was basically a bulb with a spinning fan over it. There was a 3-piece suite, a writing desk, and even a radiogram, which was a valve radio and a record player that would only play 78 RPM records. All these records ended up being warmed up in hot water, and you can only blame Blue Peter for that. They showed us how to do it, so we made sure we did. We were only allowed to spend time in this room at Christmas time, when we got our presents. Within 2 days, the presents were taken to our bedrooms. Girlfriends were allowed, with our mother's approval, but she would say, "I don't want any hanky-panky." The rest of the year, it was out of bounds for us. The living room is where we spent most of our time. It had a 3-seater settee and 2 separate chairs. We usually had all our meals in there. There was also a coal fire that was usually alight, especially in winter time. This was prepared by our mother or father at night, ready for the morning. Preparation was, first, clear the cinders out the bottom of the grate, then scrunch up an old newspaper and place this into the grate. Then place thin wooden sticks on top. There would be a full coal scuttle ready for the morning. In the morning it would be lit by our mother or father. Using a match you would light the paper, then wait while holding a very large newspaper in your hands. You would quickly cover the front of the fire grate with a newspaper, which usually set it alight, causing the now disintegrating paper to shoot up the chimney, which could sometimes set the chimney on fire. In the 1960s we did have a large black and white telly with one of those stupid portable aerials that you had to adjust every 5 minutes to get a picture. Sometimes one of us had to hold it in a certain position while everyone else watched the telly programme. In those days we watched the moon landings, boxing, Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali is known later. We also watched kids programmes like Blue Peter, Fireball XL5 and Watch with Mother. In the kitchen we had a coke-fired Aga cooker and hob, lots of wall cabinets for food and utensils, a large sink, floor cupboards with work surfaces, a large cabinet for outdoor clothes. Our dad sometimes brought seaweed from the River Dee. He called it samkin. I could think of another name for it though. It's full of iron, he said. He would boil it in a large saucepan on the Aga. It had to be boiled for hours, which stunk the place out. My dad was the only one brave enough to eat it. It turned his teeth and lips green. The outhouse. From the kitchen there was an outhouse made of wood and glass. Sometimes we called it a lean-to. This had a large glass roof and a glass frame door leading to the backyard. Inside we had an electric cooker and grill and cabinets for tinned food. There was a small drain outside which during heavy rain it usually got blocked, flooding the outhouse floor. We always had ants inside, but they didn't mind travelling because one day I took my small plastic lunchbox as usual to school. I opened it up, put my hand inside and came out with millions of ants on my hand. My mother must have made the sandwiches and left them on the breadboard for a while before putting them in the box. The backyard. The backyard was only small. On the right was a wooden door leading to a small storage room, which I think used to be the outside toilet, which then held the coke for the Aga cooker. Again, on the right was a large frosted window on the bathroom wall, which allowed a lot of light into it. Ahead were 2 steps up to the next level of the very small square garden. This split off. Straight ahead was the back gate, and on the right was to the large black garage that used to be my Uncle Jack's pantomime company workshop. Up on this level there was a coal bunker. Upstairs, but I don't have any photos for this bit. The front one being the largest, which had 3 single beds for me and my 2 brothers. The middle bedroom was a lot smaller. This was my sister's until she flew the nest in 1974. Our parents stayed in a very small back bedroom until my older brother claimed it because it was warmer in the winter. This was due to the stovepipe that ran from the Aga cooker through the bedroom and through the roof. Central heating did not exist in those days, well, not unless you were rich, so to heat rooms upstairs our parents bought paraffin heaters which would be lit before going to bed to heat the rooms up. Problem was they smelt so bad we had to leave the windows open, so it just went cold again. We did get gas heaters, but we were always scared of it leaking. We only used them for a short while. There was a single bar electric fire in the fire grate, but we could not leave it on all night. At night, especially in the winter, we had a lot of woolen blankets over us, so most of the time you could hardly move. There was no toilet or plumbing upstairs, so when we were young we had ceramic bowls under our beds. There was no such thing as double glazing, so in the winter if we had a very bad condensation on the windows it would often freeze up, leaving a thick layer of ice on the windowsill and bottom part of the window. The New Inn area. I have utilised an old 1870s OS map showing the small village with a New Inn pub. I have drawn Fron Road in yellow. I found a photo of the New Inn on the internet. You can't see them, but there were old stables on the right hand side of the pub. Our father got us a Saturday job breaking up crisp boxes for the landlord, Fred Malooly, who our dad said you don't want to upset. He was well known to be a very strict landlord. The job consisted of basically flatten and stack cardboard boxes. We were left alone, but now and then the landlord would come out to see the progress. We usually spotted him, so he acted like little angels. As soon as he went, it was a free-for-all, throwing bits of hay and boxes at each other. But the messing around took over until we got caught by the landlord. We got dismissed, so hanging our heads in shame, mainly because we would miss the pocket money, that's all. At this time I would have been around 7 or 8. This is a photo from the internet of the landlord of the New Inn, Mr. Malooly. Would you mess with this guy? Connah Market was held every Thursday and was very popular in the area. I again found photos off the internet. We had a grandstand view due to it being opposite our house. That's me on my motorbike, my first motorbike. This was a Vespa scooter, but the engine blew up. Then I had a James motorbike that tipped over in the back alley, petrol poured out and set fire to our neighbour's new back gate. He wasn't very happy for some reason. I was working in Somerses, so the Yamaha was my get to work bike. Probably worth a lot of money now. If only I knew it before I sideswiped a car and wrote it off. This photo was taken from Breeze Hill, looking down the alley between Fron Road on the right and D Road on the left. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I remember what it used to be like, which I'll show you a few photographs after this, but I can't understand why it's not being maintained. This photograph shows the old pantomime workshop on the right and that crazy guy in the middle. I think there's been an earthquake or something, but you can see how clear the alleyway was. And that green gate you can see is the one we accidentally put a light that burnt down not long after this photograph. It was like a Viking burial. Right, this was taken in around back end of 2022, and that bush on the right is where the black garage used to be. And what I used to do, and my uncle I think, we would use that ramp to make it easier to get in and out the garage. I think this was taken around 1974, 75. You can see just the edge of the black garage on the right, but you can also see the concrete garage with that ramp. These two photos were taken roughly from the same place. First, the 1970s, second, 2023. Big difference. I wonder what lies beneath all this. Maybe rats, broken glass, chemicals, especially from that fridge that's been dumped there. It's even a fire risk for the summer. The next photo is looking along the alley between D Road and Fron Road. On the right, there used to be a very busy tyre and exhaust repair garage. This is looking up the alley between D Road and Fron Road, and it was taken from the bottom of the alley. This shows the end of the alley at D Road, looking towards what used to be the Hippodrome Theatre and Cinema. I remember when I was about 8, watching my two brothers walk to the pictures, as we called it. My mother said I was too young at the time, so I had to walk back alone. I was gutted. When I was old enough, I went to pay the lady in the booth and found out she was one of my aunties. So when I paid, I got my money back. More sweets then. These are two photos of the Hippodrome in its prime, and again off the internet, followed by one from our archives, I think from around the 1940s, showing our uncle Jack Evans standing on the right outside the Hippodrome, but I don't know who the other two were, maybe relations. If you go across D Road from here, go along the alley and you come to a concrete fence. Turn left and turn right, that's the way to Mould Road, but if you look on the right, there's a concrete fence there. This is where a major crime took place, which involved the Rozzers, well, police as they called them in films back then. There was an orchard behind the concrete fence, so someone decided, not me gov, to go scrumping. I was nominated as lookout, not because I was vigilant, but because I was too small to climb over the concrete fence. Suddenly, from nowhere, a 6-foot-odd police sergeant crept up on me and said slowly,
Hello, 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 what's going on here then?
I looked up and suddenly realised the game was up. It's a fair cop, I thought. The policeman told me to call the others. We were told to drop the loot, or the apples. He said he would tell our parents. He bent down over us and whispered from the side of his mouth,
I don't want to see you lot here again.
We darted off. These are a few pages from a local newspaper called The Advertiser and Reminder. This was printed at Fewsters, who were based at the bottom of Mould Road. The pages show 3 programmes from 3 different cinemas that we had access to. The first, the Plaza Queen's Ferry, which is now gone, demolished to make the large car park. Second, the Hippodrome, Connah, now a second-hand furniture shop. Lastly, the Alhambra, or Alhambra as some people say it, Shotton, demolished to build Tesco's, which is now Iceland. See my previous vlog about the Tesco run. After the shock of going back to Fron Road in 2023 and seeing the changes, I decided I would include a comparison of the alleyways between Shotton and Connah. I've included a recent photo taken in Shotton between Roden Street and Brook Road to compare with Fron Road and ask the question, why the large difference? Shotton, well maintained, good drainage and lighting, Fron Road, completely the opposite. Next, an old OS map showing a Maud Street railway crossing. In the early 60s, we used to go over the river bank with our push bikes using Maud Street crossing. It was a bit scary when a steam train passed by because you seemed so close to the rails. When there were no trains in sight, we would place the old pennies on top of the rail to flatten them, but mostly you lost them because they flew off when the train wheel went over them. There were 2 small signal indicators at Maud Street crossing, so you knew when the trains were due. The next slide shows the indicators and a little write-up. The configuration of Maud Street crossings in the 1960s consisted of 2 large wooden white crossing gates, 2 small pedestrian gates and 2 small signal indicators which were installed into a wooden cabinet by the gates. When a train was due, the signals would show off or point upwards. On the down line, you had a good sighting distance, not so on the up due to the bend. The next 2 photos are of Wepper Crossing, taken in 2023. Due to the erected fences, I couldn't fully inspect for any trace of signal indicators similar to Maud Street. I've never used or seen this crossing until I started this research. I have found newspaper cuttings covering 2 incidents. One at Maud Street Railway Crossing, Connah, which was a double track crossing layout. The other at Wepper Railway Crossing, which was close to Shotton low level station. This was a 4-track layout. Newspaper cuttings conclusions. Neither of the crossings had footbridges installed, but the installation of the signal repeaters at Maud Street may have come out of the inquiry. It may have been the same at Wepper Crossing, but I'm unsure of what the full configuration was even after going to see the crossing in 2023. There was another incident at Maud Street Crossing that I remember personally, where the crossing keeper at that time, who stayed in the house by the crossing, committed suicide, but I can't find any article at present. There was a 3rd crossing at the bottom of Salisbury Street in Shotton, which goes from the street to the football field. I only noticed it after the council cut all the trees down in 2022. I have taken 3 photos. I had no idea what this crossing was for because it comes out onto the football field. Spot the difference. I've stuck 2 photos on the end of part 1. First, probably late 50s, other 2022. The handsome lad with the push bike is me. I was going to Irwin's, ex-Motorworld, on the corner of Wepper Drive. In passing, I noticed a man setting up a large box camera on a tripod. So, when I came back, he must have taken this photo. I've not had any royalties yet though. Well, I needed that.